The first thing I felt wasn't the guard's hand blocking me. It was the fear in his eyes when he realized who he was stopping. That's how you know something unnatural is happening when even the person hurting you looks uncomfortable doing it. He stepped forward fast, almost too fast, his black suit swallowing the light around him. "Ma'am, you need to stay right there." The music behind him was warm and soft, the kind that belongs at a perfect wedding. But the tone he used, cold enough to frost the air. My heel froze mid-step. Something inside me knew I wasn't supposed to hear what came next. I'm Delphine Avery, and if you're a mother watching this, drop a broken heart in the comments so I know you can feel this moment in your bones. Now, listen closely. "Not on the list," he said. Those 3 words hit my skin like ice water. Not on the list. Not on the list. Not on the list. My mind went blank for a breath, then filled with every detail of the morning. The silver wrap I ironed twice. The perfume I dabbed behind my ears. The prayer I whispered while fastening my earrings. None of it mattered now. I reached into my purse, hands shaking. So hard the zipper sounded louder than the music. I tapped Janelle's name. The phone rang twice. She answered with a breathy, too calm, "Mama?" "I'm at the gate." I whispered. "Security is saying I'm not." She cut me off. Not with anger. Not with confusion. With finality. "Mama, I hired another mother." Her voice didn't tremble. Mine did. "The best wedding gift you can give us is to disappear forever." Something in me, something old, something I'd built my whole life, cracked so loudly I swore he heard it. But I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. I just listened, because a second later, I heard it. Heels. Slow. Expensive. Approaching my daughter from behind. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Tall. Smooth. Confident. I couldn't make out her face. Only the outline. A polished older woman stepping into a place that was mine by birth, blood, and sacrifice. Then she spoke. "Let me handle it, sweetheart." Her voice slid through the phone like oil. Familiar. Too familiar. I stepped forward instinctively. The guard slammed his palm out again. "Ma'am, don't make this harder." Harder? The roses behind him glowed under the warm lighting. Guests laughed softly from the courtyard. Champagne flutes clinked. The world moved on without me. He lifted the walkie-talkie to his ear, murmured something, and I watched a second guard approach the gate from the inside, as if I were a threat to my own child's wedding. I still hadn't put the phone down. I didn't get the chance. Janelle ended the call. I lowered the phone slowly, like any sudden movement might break the fragile shell holding me together. My hand tightened around my purse strap, knuckles whitening, breath shallow. I felt eyes on me, someone behind that woman's silhouette, watching, assessing, satisfied. The guard exhaled, almost sympathetically. "Ma'am, please step back." The wind carried the scent of roses to me, the same roses Janelle and I used to admire in grocery store aisles when she was little. She'd beg me to buy a bouquet, and I'd laugh, saying, "One day, baby, one day you'll have all the pretty things." Funny how that day arrived, and I wasn't allowed to see it. The guard reached for the gate. Metal groaned. The hinges protested. The scrape carved itself under my skin. And then the gate shut. Sharp. Heavy. Final. Something inside me went still. Not numb. Not broken. Still, the kind of stillness you feel right before a storm rises. Because in that moment, standing alone outside the wedding I paid for, I knew one thing. This wasn't humiliation. This was revelation. The steering wheel felt loose in my hands, like it belonged to somebody else. Like the car itself had pulled away from me the moment that gate shut. I sat there for a long second before pulling off, letting the engine hum quiet under my ribs. My breath wasn't steady. It moved in small, fragile pieces, each one tighter than the last. I didn't cry, not because I was strong, because the hurt was sitting too deep to reach with tears. I eased out of the parking lot and onto the road, watching streetlights smear across my windshield like smudged gold. The farther I got from the wedding grounds, the heavier my chest became, as if every mile was adding something I wasn't ready to carry. My throat felt thick. My fingers trembled once on the wheel. I straightened them before the shaking could take shape. Janelle's words replayed on their own, like somebody pressed them into the glass around me. The best wedding gift you can give us is to disappear forever. I didn't answer her. I didn't defend myself. I just held the phone until the screen dimmed, letting her voice sit inside me like a cut that hadn't stopped bleeding yet. Cars passed me, one after another, as if the world had no idea what had just cracked open inside mine. I drove slow, not because of the road, but because every breath felt like it had to be negotiated. My pulse was too loud in my ears. My hands were too tight around the wheel. But I kept driving, kept my back straight, kept my face calm in case anyone looked my way. Some hurts announced themselves with noise. This one slid in quiet. Somewhere near the fourth traffic light, something in me slipped back in time. 15 years, maybe 16. Janelle was 14, small for her age, shoulders always held a little too high, like she was bracing for something she couldn't explain. I remembered her standing in the living room, wearing a white recital dress, the one I saved up for. She had asked me 3 times if her father was coming that night. I told her, "Baby, he said he'll try." She nodded then, not believing me but wanting to. That night, I waited with her backstage, holding her cold hands while she looked at the auditorium door. When the recital began, and Reginald wasn't there, she didn't cry, not then. She danced her part perfectly. It wasn't until we got home, after the applause had faded, that she sank into my chest and whispered, "Why didn't Dad come to my recital?" Her voice that night sounded too much like mine today. Quiet, broken in places, trying to make sense of an absence she didn't earn. I held her then, thinking my arms were enough to protect her from that kind of ache. I didn't know that her hunger for his approval would grow teeth one day. I didn't know it would stretch its shadow across her adulthood, reaching all the way into a wedding I paid for. The light changed. Green. I moved forward. I didn't trust opening my mouth yet. Words felt dangerous, like if I spoke, the wound inside me would burst open and drown me right there on the road. So I stayed silent. Silent enough to hear my heartbeat, silent enough to notice that even the engine sounded unsure of me. My house came into view. The porch light I left on was still shining. It felt like mercy. I pulled into the driveway and cut the engine. The quiet that followed didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something holding its breath. I sat there with the keys still in my hand, staring at my front door, unsure how to walk inside a life that suddenly didn't fit me anymore. A tightening in my chest forced me to inhale slow enough to stop a panic that wanted to rise. I reached into my purse, more out of instinct than intention, and touched my phone. The screen lit up, bright enough to make my eyes sting. I don't know what pushed me to open my banking app. Maybe survival. Maybe suspicion. Maybe something older than both. But when I pressed my thumb to the screen and the account loaded, the first number I saw didn't make sense. A charge I did not recognize. A charge I did not approve. And right there in the dark of my quiet car, something colder than hurt settled in my spine. The house was quiet enough to hear the soft tick of the hallway clock, each second sounding like it was measuring the distance between who I was before the wedding and the woman sitting in my living room now. I didn't turn on any lights. The dark made it easier to breathe. The dark made it easier to see what I'd been blind to. I sat on the edge of my couch, shoes still on, purse beside me, phone in my hand. My thumb hovered over the screen long enough to let my heartbeat steady. Then I opened the bank app again. The charge that stopped me in the car stared back from the top of the list. $3,200. VIP female guest glam package. Time-stamped hours before the ceremony. I scrolled. At first, the numbers didn't register as anything but shapes. But then they began to settle into cents, into a kind of sense that burned. $850. Hair styling upgrade. Extended time needed. $1,100. Personal makeup artist. Full day retainer. $2,000. Private transportation SUV. 2 extra stops. $4,500. Luxury bridal suite add-on. Unauthorized. $3,200. VIP female guest glam package. Not Janelle's services. Not Corey's. Not anything tied to the couple themselves. Something else. Someone else. $15,000 in total. $15,000 I didn't authorize. $15,000 used before my own blood told me to disappear forever. My fingers curled slowly around the phone, knuckles pulling tight. I tried to stay still, but my breathing betrayed me, small, uneven drags of air that felt like they were moving through barbed wire. I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes, letting my mind drift to a moment I had tucked away somewhere I thought was safe. Janelle was 21 then, sitting on the edge of her dorm bed, scrolling through pictures on her phone. Her voice had been soft, almost shy. "Dad's wife looks perfect," she'd murmured. "I wish I had her confidence." I'd laughed lightly, trying to make it nothing. "Baby, confidence isn't something you're born with. You build it." But she didn't smile back at me. She just kept looking at the woman on her screen, a woman who seemed to live effortlessly in the center of everything Janelle wished she had. It was the kind of moment you don't think twice about until it comes back years later and sits beside you in the dark. I opened my eyes. The numbers were still on the screen, still bold, still wrong. I scrolled again, slower this time, letting each charge carve its place into my memory. None of these services matched my daughter's style. None matched the bridal package I already paid for upfront. None matched anything she ever asked me for. This wasn't Janelle treating herself. This wasn't her panicking and overspending. This wasn't a bride caught in the rush of wedding day pressure. This was planned. Someone had been prepared. Someone had been dressed, pampered, transported like royalty. Someone had been given the kind of treatment I didn't even buy for my own daughter. A tight ache began spreading in my chest, not the soft ache of sadness, but the sharp, rising one of something waking up inside me. Something old. something that remembered every sacrifice I made, every shift I picked up, every night I stayed up late, sewing her clothes, helping her dream, teaching her worth. My thumb hovered over the list, tracing the numbers as if touching them could turn them back into the trust one once had. But trust doesn't come back. It reveals what you refuse to see. I stared at that last charge, the one my mind kept circling like a vulture. VIP female guest glam package. Paid with my money. For someone who wasn't me. On the day, I was told to disappear. Slowly, carefully, I whispered into the dim room. Not loud, not dramatic, but with the quiet clarity of a woman whose heart had finally stopped making excuses. Who did she spend my money on? Morning light crept through my blinds before I even realized I had slept. If sleep was what you could call it. My body had folded itself onto the couch sometime after midnight, and now the sun was peeling me open with a gentleness I didn't feel inside. My phone lay on the coffee table, screen face down, the weight of those charges still sitting in my chest like wet sand. I stood slowly, bone stiff, breath thin. The house felt different, emptier somehow, as if it was holding its breath right along with me. I walked to the kitchen, poured water into a glass, and held it there, without drinking. My hands were too tight, too aware. There was something I needed to do, not out of anger, not out of spite, but because clarity has a way of arriving like morning light, quiet, uninvited, impossible to ignore. I picked up my keys. The house I bought for Janelle and Corey wasn't far. 10 minutes on a slow day. 7 if you didn't hit the lights. It was supposed to be my gift to them. A fresh start. A foundation. A place where joy could grow without the cracks that ruined mine. I had planned every detail. Paid every contractor. Chose neutral paint so they could make it their own. The deed was still in my name. The keys still in my purse. The future of that home still tied to a promise she broke before she received it. I drove through the quiet neighborhood, turning onto the last street like I had so many times during construction. The house stood there in the morning sun, warm, finished, patient. A new roof, clean windows, porch light installed just last week. I parked in the driveway and let the silence settle. For a moment, I saw it the way I once imagined. Janelle stepping across the threshold with laughter in her voice, Corey carrying boxes, music playing in the empty living room, their first breakfast cooked in that kitchen. I saw the future I prayed she would live, one untouched by the wounds she carried from her father, one built with both hands steady and grateful. Instead, she told me to disappear from her life before she ever opened a single door meant for her. I stepped out of the car. My feet felt heavy on the driveway, but my heart was strangely calm, like something inside me had finally found a steady beat. I walked up the porch, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside the house that was never truly theirs. The air smelled like fresh paint and quiet hope, both wasted. I ran my hand along the edge of the kitchen counter, remembering the day I signed the papers. The realtor had smiled at me, saying, "You're giving them a beautiful start." And I believed it. I had pictured Janelle's face, her excitement, her gratitude. I imagined her hugging me, saying, "Mama, you didn't have to go this far." But she did more than take my gift for granted. She erased me before she ever accepted it. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to the locksmith I used for rental properties. "I need the locks changed today." No explanation, no hesitation, just a line sent from a woman who had woken up different. While I waited for his reply, I walked the hallway, pausing at the master bedroom door. The room felt hollow, like an unfinished sentence. I had stood here weeks ago imagining their wedding morning, imagining Janelle, fixing her veil in the mirror, imagining myself standing behind her, smiling. I didn't know I was imagining a life she no longer wanted me in. My phone buzzed. On my way. 20 minutes. I nodded to no one. My choice was made. Not out of revenge. Out of truth. Out of a desire to protect what I built from someone who no longer saw me as part of her foundation. I stepped back outside and locked the door behind me, the metal click sounding final in the quiet morning air. Then I scrolled to my calendar and tapped the appointment labeled. Key handover, tomorrow 9 a.m. My thumb hovered only a second. Then I pressed cancel. The locksmith's truck hadn't even turned the corner before the weight inside my chest shifted, still heavy, but clearer somehow, sharper. I drove home slow, not because the road required it, but because something inside me did. The house felt colder when I walked in, like it had been waiting for the version of me that left earlier and didn't recognize the one who returned. I set my purse on the table, pulled out my phone, and stared at it for a long second. For years, I had been the kind of woman who handled things quietly, handled pain quietly, handled disrespect quietly, handled my daughter's disappointments quietly. But there's a moment in every mother's life when quiet stops being noble and starts being foolish. Mine had come. I scrolled to the contact I saved 5 years ago, back when a landlord tried to overcharge me for repairs I never caused. Attorney Robin Ellis. I never thought I'd need her again. I certainly never thought I'd need her because of my own child. I pressed the number. She answered on the second ring. Her voice steady, calm, the kind of tone that could hold a storm without flinching. Ms. Avery? It's been a while. How can I help you today? I sat down, letting the wooden edge of the dining chair ground me. I need to report misuse of my funds. I said. My voice surprised me, stronger than I felt, steadier than the night deserved. Tell me what happened, she said. I walked her through it. The wedding, the blocked gate, the words Janelle used, the $15,000 drained behind my back. I didn't embellish. I didn't soften. I told it plain, the way a wound tells its story through the scar. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, the silence between us felt like someone laying a clean sheet over a messy bed, tidying the chaos enough to see what needed attention. Ms. Avery, she said, finally, what your daughter did falls under 3 categories: misuse of designated funds, misrepresentation of financial intent, and emotional damages tied to financial exploitation. The words weren't dramatic. They weren't legal jargon. They were truth spoken cleanly, truth that hadn't been spoken to me in years. You trusted her, Robin continued. You specified what the money was for. She exceeded that agreement. It's more serious than you may realize. A sharp breath pulled itself into my lungs. Not shock, recognition. A mother always knows when something is bigger than her feelings. Do I have grounds to move forward? I asked. You do, she said. And if you choose to pursue this, I'll walk you through every step. But I need you to be sure. Once we start, it becomes official. Official. The word sat in the room like a new piece of furniture. Unfamiliar but necessary. I closed my eyes and, without meaning to, My mind dragged me backward, years backward, into a memory that now tasted bitter. Janelle was 8, standing in the kitchen with tears on her cheeks because she'd lost a science fair project she worked hard on. I remembered kneeling in front of her, brushing her face, and saying the words I believed would carry her through life. "Baby, if you ever need me, I'll always be here." Back then, it felt like a promise soaked in love. Now it tasted like something a fool would say, because she didn't need me. Not for love, not for guidance, not for healing. She needed me for money. And when the money finished its job, she told me to disappear from her life. I opened my eyes. "Send the paperwork." I said. Robin didn't hesitate. "I'll email the engagement letter within the hour. Once it's signed, I'll draft the claim and notify the appropriate parties." We exchanged a few more details, then hung up. The quiet that followed wasn't empty this time. It felt like a room being rearranged. Controlled, calm, necessary. An email notification buzzed seconds later. I clicked it open. The engagement letter waited at the bottom of the screen, my name typed neatly across the top. I picked up the pen on my table, the same pen I used for rent checks, birthday cards, grocery lists, and held it for a moment. Then I lowered the tip to the page. A single stroke. My signature. The line drawn. The email came just after noon. A soft chime that drifted through my quiet house like it didn't know it was carrying something heavy. I sat at the dining table, the same place where I taught Janelle her homework, braided her hair on school mornings, and wrote every grocery list that kept our lives running. Now the table held only my laptop and a part of my heart I hadn't touched yet. I clicked the attachment. The lawsuit filled the screen. Pages stacked with paragraphs, numbers, dates, and charges laid out in a way that stripped emotion and left only truth. Cold truth. Unapologetic truth. The kind of truth that doesn't hide behind love or obligation. I began reading, line by line, word by word, slow. Not because I didn't understand, because I finally did. Every sentence felt like a mirror being placed in front of me, reflecting years of forgiveness, years of excuses, years of telling myself Janelle's wounds would heal if I just loved her a little harder, a little quieter, a little longer. The document didn't care about any of that. It spoke plainly. Unauthorized financial use, misrepresentation of intended expenditures, emotional damages tied to breach of trust. My fingers tightened around the edges of the paper as I printed each page, the soft hum of the printer sounding too loud in the stillness. I stacked the pages neatly, smoothing each one with my palm. They felt heavier than paper, heavier than ink. They felt like the weight of every time I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. Halfway down page 3, something in me clenched. There it was, written in neat legal language. Funds allocated for designated purpose diverted without authorization. Diverted, a small word, but it held everything. I leaned back slightly, breath catching the way it always did when something old resurfaced, something I had buried so deep I forgot its shape. She was 17, barely a woman, but already carrying a girl's hunger in her chest. She sat at the kitchen counter, elbows on the marble, chin in her hands. She had waited all evening for a birthday call from Reginald. I made her favorite dinner, broccoli, cheddar rice, and fried chicken, hoping food could soften disappointment. It didn't. She looked up at me suddenly, eyes too bright. "Mama, if Dad sees how successful I become, maybe he'll come around." I remembered the way her voice cracked on that last word. Come around. She said it like she still believed he was circling somewhere nearby, waiting to notice her. I brushed her cheek then, trying to steady the ache under her skin. Baby, you don't need to earn love, I told her. But she didn't hear me. She only heard the sound of a girl trying to be enough for a man who had already chosen someone else. And now, sitting here with these papers in my hand, I felt how that same ache had grown into something that led her to erase me on her wedding day, while using my money to honor someone she believed might finally make him proud. My jaw tightened. I breathed slow, careful, as if I needed to hold something inside me steady. I flipped to the final page. The signature line waited at the bottom. Empty, expectant, patient. A thin black line carrying the weight of years. The room felt different around me. Not brighter, not darker, just clearer, like a fog had finally lifted and left nothing but the truth standing in place. I picked up my pen. Before I signed, I touched the top page with my fingertips, the way you touch something delicate before letting it go. Then I lowered the pen. My name flowed across the line with a steadiness my heart didn't have, each letter cutting clean through the kind of pain you don't speak out loud. I placed the pen down, stacked the pages, pressed them together once. Then I slid them into the large brown envelope waiting beside me. The seal tightened under my fingers with a soft, final sound. The packet was ready. They were still in their wedding clothes when they pulled into the driveway of their old townhouse. The one they'd lived in for 2 years. The one I helped them furnish when they first started planning a future together. Neighbors later told me they pulled in fast, laughing, still floating on the high of applause and fresh vows. They ran inside only long enough to grab 2 overnight bags, rushing, excited, ready to step into the new life they thought they owned. The life I paid for. The home I built. The future I had signed with my name. They didn't know that while their reception music was still vibrating through those rented speakers, while guests were clinking glasses over their happiness, while they posed for pictures under chandeliers they never thanked me for, I had already changed the fate of their first night as husband and wife. They drove straight from the townhouse to the new home. The wedding gift they believed waited for them like a promise carved in stone. They had plans for that house, plans they never discussed with me, plans built on the assumption that my love had no boundaries and no expiration date. I know how excitement looks in a young couple. I know how it feels to believe life is opening its palms to you. I know how it blinds people to the hands that held them up. They turned onto the quiet cul-de-sac, headlights washing over the fresh porch rails and new landscaping. The house glowed softly under the streetlights, warm, inviting, exactly the way I intended when I chose every fixture and color. But when they stepped out of the car, something shifted. The porch light wasn't on. The front door didn't look the same. Corey tried the doorknob first, lightly at first, then with confused pressure. It didn't move. He tried again. Nothing. Janelle stepped forward. I imagine she clutched her small wedding clutch a little tighter, still smelling of roses and hairspray, still believing this was just a simple mistake. But the lock didn't turn. The key in her hand, the one I gave her early, so she could peek at her future, suddenly meant nothing. When nothing else worked, she looked down. A white envelope sat on the welcome mat. Not fancy, not dramatic, Just plain paper carrying the kind of truth that doesn't need decoration. She must have gone still. I can almost feel it, the quiet moment when her heart sank before her mind caught up. Corey took the envelope, opened it, and unfolded the single page, notice printed in clean black letters. Transfer revoked. Property remains under Delphine Avery Locke's updated, effective immediately. I didn't include anger. I didn't include explanation. I didn't include apology. Just truth. A truth she made necessary. I wasn't there, but I can picture how it unfolded. Corey reading the page twice. Janelle snatching it from him. Her eyes moving fast over the words, then faster. The slow spread of shock climbing her face. Her voice cracking before she even understood the depth of what she lost. They stood on that porch dressed in silk and promise, two newlyweds staring at a house they believed they earned by simply existing inside my love. But love has limits. Trust has limits. And I had finally found mine. Neighbors told me, Janelle whispered, she wouldn't do this. Not out of confidence, out of fear. Fear of the first consequence she had ever earned from me. Corey tried to call me. I let the phone ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. Silence that felt necessary. Silence that felt like discipline. Silence that felt like the beginning of truth. Later, they sat on the porch steps, still in their wedding clothes, the notice trembling between them. The excitement drained out of their bodies inch by inch until all that remained was confusion and a sharp kind of disappointment that comes when reality finally catches up to entitlement. They didn't know this was only the first door I was closing. Because early the next morning, before they could even pick up their faces from the floor, another envelope was already on its way to the address they never left. A different kind of envelope, a heavier one, a louder one. And while they sat outside the house they no longer had, I signed the delivery order that would reach them next. Morning didn't arrive softly for them. It came with a knock. Not the gentle kind meant for family or neighbors. The kind that carries authority in its knuckles. The sun had barely climbed over the rooftops when the process server stepped onto the porch of their old townhouse, the address printed on every wedding contract, every vendor agreement, every legal line tied to the event I paid for. He wore a dark jacket and carried a thick manila envelope under his arm. The kind of envelope that doesn't bend, doesn't apologize, doesn't wait. I wasn't there, but I didn't need to be. I knew the rhythm of that knock would echo through their walls long after the sound faded. Janelle opened the door, wearing the same satin robe she'd worn the morning of her wedding. The silk looked different now. Wrinkled, tired, wilted in places like it had absorbed the weight of the night before. Her face was bare, her eyes puffy, her hair pushed behind her ears in a way that showed she hadn't slept. Janelle Avery? The man asked. She nodded slowly. He held out the envelope. You've been served. The words dropped at her feet like a stone. Neighbors later told me she stood frozen for a few seconds, fingers curled but unmoving, as if taking the envelope might split her skin. But eventually she reached out, because consequences don't wait for courage. They arrive whether you're ready or not. She took it with hands that trembled. Inside the townhouse, Corey hovered near the hallway, still in sweatpants, rubbing his forehead with the same hand he rubbed his vows on the day before. He looked at the envelope, then at her, then back again, as if hoping it was a misunderstanding, as if hoping life would give them One more night of bliss before reality clawed back what it was owed. "What is that?" he asked. Janelle didn't answer. Her mouth opened, then closed again, like language itself had turned against her. She walked to the living room and sat on the edge of their gray love seat, the one she picked out during a spring sale, while dreaming of making the new house her home. Corey sank next to her. "You should open it," he said quietly. Her fingers slipped under the seal. The paper crackled. The envelope opened. I imagine the silence between them changed temperature then, shifted from confusion to something else, something heavier, something with sharp edges. Page 1. Notice of civil claim. Page 2. Misuse of funds, $15,000. Page 3. Misrepresentation and unauthorized expenditures. Page 4. My name. Clear. Unshaken. Signed. Janelle's breath stuttered in her chest. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth, like she was trying to block the truth from getting in. But truth doesn't knock. Truth walks through walls. Her husband took the papers gently, scanning the lines as his jaw tightened. His eyes moved slow at first, then faster, then stopped altogether at the list of unauthorized charges. "This for the wedding?" he asked. She stayed silent. "Why didn't you tell me your mom paid for this much?" Silence again. The kind that doesn't just fill a room, it splits it. He turned one page, then another. His eyes landed on the glam package, the transportation upgrades, the luxury suite, the personal services meant for someone who wasn't standing in their home. "What is all this?" His voice wasn't angry, not yet, but disbelief sat heavy in every syllable. Janelle swallowed hard. Her fingers dug into her robe. A tremor moved up her shoulders. He looked at her fully then, not like a husband, like a man trying to locate the truth in a world where everything suddenly feels borrowed. "This is serious," he said slowly. "This isn't something your mother can just take back. She's suing you, Janelle." The way he said her name didn't sound like love. It sounded like distance. She stared at the papers again, breath shivering, the edges of the documents trembling between her fingers. Somewhere outside, a bird chirped, too bright, too unaware of the storm swelling inside that small living room. And as the morning sun lit their walls, turning everything soft except the truth in their hands, the envelope slipped from Janelle's fingers and fell to the floor. The first call came while I was loading the dishwasher. The second came while I was wiping the counter. By the third, the phone vibrated so hard against the wooden table it sounded like it wanted to break through. All 3 calls came from the same name. Janelle. I let each one ring. Not out of cruelty. Cruelty has never lived in me. But there are wounds that cannot be answered with a hello. And there are daughters who don't realize silence is a consequence until it lands on them like a shadow. I kept my back turned, my movements steady, even as something inside me trembled in places I hadn't touched in years. I cleaned the kitchen counter slowly, wiping in small circles. It was the same counter where I once packed her school lunches, peanut butter sandwiches cut diagonally, apple slices she never finished, tiny notes I used to slip inside saying, "Have a good day, baby." Now, the only thing on that counter was my phone vibrating with her name. I smoothed my palm over the wipe I held, my breath warm and thin in my chest. For a moment, my hand shook, just once like a memory trying to climb out of me. But I paused, put both hands on the counter, and waited for the tremor to settle. It did. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it steadies itself quietly on a kitchen counter. The phone fell silent. I washed the wiping cloth, rinsed the sink, took a long breath. Then it rang again. This time the sound cut through the room sharp enough to pull my eyes toward it. Janelle, calling. The screen lit up the dim kitchen with her name in white letters. For a moment, I imagined picking it up. I imagined hearing her say, "Mama," the way she used to when she scraped her knee or forgot her house key. I imagined hearing fear in her voice, shame, hurt, something human enough to reach me. But Janelle had crossed a line bigger than a wedding. She had chosen someone else's love over the woman who raised her. She had spent my money honoring strangers while erasing me. And now she wanted access only because consequences had knocked on her door. No, not today. The call rang until the screen dimmed again. I walked to the refrigerator, opened it, closed it. I wasn't hungry, just restless. I straightened a few magnets without actually looking at them. My body moved, but my mind stayed in that kitchen, feeling the weight of every choice that brought us here. The phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call. A voicemail notification blinked across the screen. One new message. Another buzz followed immediately. Another missed call. Another voicemail. Then another. For messages from a daughter who finally understood that silence hurts louder than words. I didn't listen. Not yet. Not when my heart still felt tender from the years she chipped away at me piece by piece without ever noticing. I took my time cleaning the last corner of the counter, letting the cloth glide across the surface slow and steady. I folded it, placed it neatly on the sink ledge, and stood still for a few seconds, feeling the quiet settle thick around me. Then my phone lit up again. But this time, the name wasn't Janelle. This name sent a cold line down my spine. Reginald. Not a call. A voicemail. He had never called me the day Janelle was born. Never called the day she graduated. Never called the day she cried in my arms at 14 because he missed her recital. But today, when the life he helped shatter finally cracked open, he had something to say. The voicemail notification blinked once. Then again. My breath slowed. I picked up the phone, held it in my palm, pressed the screen with one finger. Then I pressed play. The voicemail opened with a breath. Not a greeting, not an apology, just that heavy, familiar exhale I used to hear when he was about to explain something wrong as if it were reasonable. Delphine, I just heard from Janelle. He said, voice low, almost cautious. She's upset. And look, I know how this might sound, but you need the full story. I felt my fingers curl around the edge of the counter. I told her I'd only come to the wedding if my wife could stand beside her. As her mother figure, you know how appearances matter at these things. I wasn't trying to replace you or anything. It was just. I paused the voicemail. Just. That word again. Just a little disrespect. Just a little erasure. Just a little humiliation. Men like him survive on just. I pressed play again. She agreed, Delphine. She wanted me there. She said she'd do anything to finally make things right between us. I didn't think she'd take it so far, but she made her own choices. My throat tightened, so that voice I heard in the distance at the wedding, the one saying, "Let me handle it, sweetheart," it wasn't a stranger. It was her, the woman who helped pull my marriage apart, The woman who whispered poison into a young girl's ears for years without ever meeting her. And my daughter, my only child, opened the door wide for her. The voicemail continued, his tone shifting into something that sounded like self-defense wrapped in regret. And those charges you're upset about, the glam services, the transportation, yeah, those were for her. My wife wanted to present well. And Janelle said you were covering the costs. She told us you insisted. I closed my eyes. She told them you insisted. So Janelle didn't just take my money. She used my name to polish the woman who ruined my household. A slow, cold ache threaded through my chest. He kept talking. She wanted to make a good impression. She wanted me proud of her. She said you'd understand, that you wouldn't mind because you always take care of things. Always. 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 That word tasted like metal in my mouth. I pressed pause. The kitchen fell quiet. I leaned on the counter with both hands, head bowed, breath trembling out of me in small waves. For years, I believed I could mother Janelle strong enough that she wouldn't chase a man who never chased her. I believed love could fill the cracks he left. I believed showing up for her every game, every recital, every time she cried over his absence would one day outweigh the empty space he carved inside her. But pain is powerful, and so is longing. A memory rose without permission. She was 11, small, knobby knees, her hair in two thick braids I had done before school. She sat on her bed with her arms wrapped around her legs, tears slipping silently down her face. "Do you think Dad loves me?" she whispered. The kind of whisper that breaks a mother's bones. I knelt beside her, smoothed her hair, wiped her tears. I lied gently. I lied beautifully. I lied the way mothers do when they're trying to keep a child whole. But the truth grew in her anyway, quiet, sharp, hungry. And now here it was fully grown. I unpaused the voicemail. His voice returned, softer now. "Look, I didn't know she'd treat you like that. I didn't tell her to keep you out. But she really wanted me there. She said this wedding was her chance to finally be seen by me." The breath that left me wasn't a sob. It wasn't even pain. It was recognition. Recognition of a girl who'd been chasing a ghost since childhood. Recognition of a daughter who believed love came in conditions. Recognition of the moment she decided the only way to earn her father's presence was to replace the mother who never left. The voicemail ended abruptly, his last words hanging in the air like smoke. I stood there, still as stone. My voice came out in a whisper, raw and quiet, the truth settling on my tongue for the first time. She replaced me to be chosen. The house was quiet when I finally sank into the living room chair, the voicemail still echoing faintly in the back of my mind. Not the words themselves. Those were already burned into me, but the tone, that soft, practiced calm Reginald always used when he was trying to explain away something cruel. I sat there a long while, hands resting on my thighs, breath slow and steady. My body felt tired in away bones, remember, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I didn't speak right away. When I finally did, the words slipped out soft, steady, and meant for whoever needed to hear them. "She didn't betray me for money," I murmured. The sentence tasted quiet, but not weak, like truth finally settling where it belonged. She betrayed me for him. That was the part that stung, not the $15,000, not the wedding, Not the blocked gate, not even the replacements. It was the way she kept reaching for a father who never once reached back. The way she twisted herself into a shape she thought he'd love. The way she traded me, her constant, for a man who was only constant in his absence. I leaned back, the cushion sighing under my weight. And when she used my money to honor the woman who broke my life, my voice shook once, a thin quiver that passed through me like a ghost brushing my shoulder. But I steadied myself, breathed through it, and whispered the rest without blinking. That's when I took back every penny. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. Love has a currency. Mine had been drained for years. I glanced toward the side table where a photo frame sat angled toward me. I hadn't looked at it closely in a long time. The picture held Janelle at 5 years old, front teeth missing, hair in uneven ponytails, cheeks round and gleaming from sun and childhood. She was reaching toward the camera, reaching toward me, a smile so wide it made her eyes nearly disappear. I lifted the frame with both hands. Her tiny fingers were frozen midair, reaching for the mother she believed could fix anything. I remembered that day. It was at a summer fair. She'd begged for cotton candy and dropped the whole thing on the ground within minutes. Her tears had come fast, big, sloppy sobs that shook her whole body. I'd scooped her up, bought her another one, wiped her face with my sleeve. She laughed again before the tears even dried. For a moment, the memory pulled something warm through me like a thread tugged from a blanket I hadn't wrapped myself in for years. I let the feeling pass because the truth sat right beside it, bigger, heavier, undeniable. Somewhere along the way, the world taught my daughter that the only love worth fighting for was the one that kept walking away, not the one that stayed. She tied her worth to the wrong man and believed that choosing him meant discarding me. And she did, boldly, publicly, completely. That's why I took the house back. That's why I pressed charges. That's why I shut the door she tried to erase me from. Not because she hurt my pockets, but because she tried to turn my love into something disposable. I set the photo down slowly, letting my fingers rest on the edge of the frame for a moment before releasing it. The quiet settled around me again, not empty, not sad, just honest. Then, a knock at the door. Sharp, firm, close. Not a package, not a neighbor, not hesitation. It was the kind of knock that carries news. I stood up slowly, the air shifting as I moved, something inside me tightening with instinct. The knocking came again. And just like that, the next chapter of the storm arrived. The knocking didn't stop. It softened, then grew frantic, then softened again, as if the person on the other side was wrestling with themselves. I walked toward the door slowly, feeling every step in my knees, in my chest, in the part of me that still wished things had ended differently. I unlocked the deadbolt, but left the chain on. The door opened only halfway, and there she was, my daughter, my only child, standing on my porch with her face blotchy, mascara smudged, hair pulled back like she'd gotten dressed in a hurry. Her shoulders trembled beneath her thin jacket, and for the first time since the wedding, she looked small. Not the bride who dismissed me at a luxury venue. Not the woman who spent my money to polish another woman's crown. Just a daughter who finally ran out of excuses. Mama, her voice cracked, thin as paper. Tears clung to her lashes, ready to fall. She pressed her palm to the crack of the door, as if trying to reach through the space I left between us. I didn't widen the opening. She swallowed hard. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't mean to hurt you. The words tumbled out in a rush, frantic, breathless, tangled, but not complete, not honest. Her eyes darted away the moment she reached the edge of truth. I saw the hesitation. I saw the calculation. I saw loyalty bending in the wrong direction again, even as tears streaked down her face. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting him. And that told me everything. She sniffed hard, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I never wanted you to feel left out. I just made mistakes. Dumb mistakes. I shouldn't have spent that money. I shouldn't have shut you out. I shouldn't have. Her breath shuddered. She shook her head, still avoiding it, still avoiding the real betrayal. I leaned against the doorframe, studying her, not with anger, not with softness, with clarity. For years, I'd tried to shield her from his absence, from his rejection, from the way she broke herself in half trying to earn a kind of love he never had the courage to give. But standing there, watching her cry, with one truth tucked tightly behind her teeth, I realized pain had become her compass. She still believed protecting her father was the path to belonging. She would rather lie to herself than risk disappointing him. Her shoulders slumped as she whispered, "Mama, can we please fix this? Please? I'll pay you back. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't leave me." The words were real. The emotion was real. But the truth was still hiding behind her fear. I opened the door a few inches more, just enough for the cold air to slip in between us. "Janelle," I said quietly. She lifted her eyes. Hope flickered in them, quick, desperate, shaky. "You came here crying," I continued, "but you didn't come here honest." She froze. A heartbeat passed, then another. Then she looked down, guilt washing over her like a slow tide. She knew exactly what I meant, and she still wasn't ready to say it. "I'm trying, Mama," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "You're trying to clean a wound without lifting the bandage." Her breath hitched. I stepped back, letting the chain of the door glint between us like a line neither of us could pretend wasn't there. "If you want me to hear the truth," I said, voice calm but unshakable, "you need to bring the whole truth to my door." She looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" I held her eyes. Steady, clear, unmoving. "Bring your father," I said, "and his wife." Her lips parted, shock cutting through her expression. Like lightning, "You didn't betray me alone." They came just after 4 o'clock. The sun was still high enough to expose every truth people try to hide in shadows. I heard the car doors first, 2 sharp slams, and one softer one, like someone unsure if they should have come at all. I opened the front door before they could knock. I didn't invite them inside. I stepped onto the porch and stood behind the small table I'd placed there minutes earlier. The table held one thing: every receipt, every unauthorized charge, every dollar used to polish someone else's crown. Janelle stood in front, eyes swollen from crying. Behind her, Reginald adjusted his shirt collar like he was preparing for a job interview, and his wife, Angela, kept her sunglasses on even though the porch was shaded. A family reunion made of fractures. I pointed to the chairs. "Sit." They did. I remained standing. The air was too still, Too quiet, too full of the things no one wanted to say first. Janelle's fingers twisted in her lap, trembling. Reginald stared at the railings like he was waiting for a teleprompter to save him. Angela kept her chin lifted, pretending the porch beneath her wasn't the same porch she'd helped poison years ago. I spread the receipts across the table with slow, deliberate movements. The paper made a soft, fluttering sound, gentle, but powerful. Each page was a truth. Each line item was a betrayal. No one spoke. Finally, I looked at Angela. Squarely, directly. No blinking. No softening. Why did you let her erase me? The question sliced through the air like a clean blade. Angela stiffened. Her sunglasses couldn't hide the way her jaw tightened, the way her breath caught in her throat. She looked at Janelle, then at Reginald, then at me, her lips pressed together, so tightly they lost color. She didn't speak, not because she didn't have an answer, but because shame was louder. Janelle let out a broken sob, not dramatic, not exaggerated, the kind that comes from the center of a wound that's been festering for years. Reginald shifted in his chair, clearing his throat. Now, Delphine, let's not do all this on the porch. We're all adults here. Things got complicated. She just wanted her father at her wedding. I didn't look at him. Complicated. I repeated softly, is that what we call teaching a child she has to replace her mother to earn her father's presence? His face twitched. He tried again. I didn't tell her to cut you out. She misinterpreted. No, my voice didn't rise, but it stopped him cold. You gave her a condition. Then you watched a little girl inside a grown woman break herself to meet it. His shoulders dropped, not in remorse, but in exposure. Lies look ugly in daylight. Angela finally spoke, her voice small. I didn't know she was taking it that far. I didn't know she was spending your money on me. I tilted my head. You stood by while she did. You stood by while she handed you a place that was never yours. You stood by while she erased me to impress you both. Angela's lips trembled. She looked down at her hands, the same hands she used to pull at the threads of my marriage years ago. Janelle shook her head hard. Mama, I didn't mean. You did, I said gently. Not out of hate, out of hunger. And he fed it. She covered her face with both hands, shoulders shaking. Reginald tried to sit up straighter, as if posture could rebuild dignity. Delphine, what do you want from us? I looked at the receipts again. The numbers. The dates, the quiet, steady hurt. I want accountability, I said, not excuses, not tears, not explanations wrapped in softness. I picked up a blank sheet of paper from the edge of the table and placed it in front of them. Today, we write a repayment agreement. Angela's head snapped up. Reginald froze. Janelle's breath stumbled in her throat. You will return every unauthorized dollar she took. I said, my voice calm, measured, final. And we will put it in writing. Right here. Right now. The silence that followed wasn't still. It cracked. And then, slow, reluctant, unavoidable, they reached for the pen. Corey didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam a door, didn't curse, didn't pace. Sometimes silence is louder than all of that. Sometimes silence is the thing that forces truth out of hiding. He sat at the edge of their couch, elbows on his knees, wedding ring glinting under the lamp. Janelle stood near the doorway, her hands twisting in front of her like she was trying to wring the guilt out of her own fingers. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. She froze. Her breath stuttered. Her eyes darted toward the floor. "Everything, Janelle." Same tone. No rise. No fall. No escape. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "I told you, Mama misunderstood. Stop." He didn't shout it, but it cut like a shout. His parents sat on the other sofa, people who had welcomed her into their home, cooked her meals, sent her wedding gifts, bragged about her to their friends. Now, they watched her like she was someone they didn't quite recognize, someone wearing their son's last name, but holding something dark behind her eyes. Corey leaned back slowly, as if giving her space to come forward. "Start with the wedding," he said. "Start with who planned what. Start with why your mother wasn't allowed inside. Start with the money." Janelle's face crumpled. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she whispered. "That's not an answer." Tears slid down her cheeks, fast and unchecked. "Dad said he'd only come if I let his wife be the one to stand with me. He said it would look better. He said it would show that we had a real family." Corey's jaw clenched. His mother looked away. His father exhaled slowly, disappointment settling in the room like a weight. Janelle wiped her face with both hands. "I wanted him there. I wanted him to finally see me, to be proud of me. I didn't want to look like the girl whose father left." "So, you replaced your mother?" Corey asked. The question broke her completely. Her knees buckled. She sank into the armchair, sobbing hard enough her whole body shook. I didn't think it would hurt her like that. I thought she'd still love me no matter what. I thought she'd understand I had to choose the version of family I never got to have." Corey stared at her, expression torn between heartbreak and disbelief. "But you didn't choose a family," he said softly. "You chose approval. You chose a man who hasn't chosen you your whole life." That sentence cracked something open inside her. "I know," she gasped. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His mother spoke then, her voice thin, controlled. "Janelle, why didn't you tell us she paid for the entire wedding?" Janelle closed her eyes, shame washing over her. "Because I knew you would have told me not to do it. I knew you would have told me I was wrong." Her father-in-law shook his head slowly. "You put all of us in a situation built on lies. More tears, more shaking, more truth spilling out of the cracks she'd been trying to hold together. And the money?" Corey asked quietly. "The glam service, the upgrades, the transportation? Why didn't you tell me?" Janelle's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because it wasn't for me. It was for her. I wanted her to look perfect. I wanted Dad to be proud when he saw her standing next to me." A long, hollow silence filled the room. Even her in-laws' kind, patient people watched her now with caution, confusion, and something like grief, not for what she did, but for who she had become in the doing of it. Corey placed his hand on his forehead and closed his eyes. "This isn't just a mistake, Janelle. This is a pattern. This is a wound you let guide your whole life." She sobbed harder, reaching for him, but he didn't move toward her. Her mother-in-law finally said it. "You need help, sweetheart. Real help. This didn't start at that wedding." Everything in the room felt fragile. Every breath, every truth, every future. And before anyone could speak another word, before the dust even settled from the confession that shattered her marriage at its start, my phone rang. I stepped into my own living room, lifted it, and answered. My lawyer's voice was calm, certain, final. Delphine, the settlement has been accepted. The repayment arrived first. A cashier's check, clean, crisp, impersonal, slipped inside a navy blue envelope my lawyer forwarded to me. The amount was exact, down to the last cent. No rounded numbers, no sentimental extras. Just the money she took, returned the way a debt is returned, without affection, without warmth, without the expectation of forgiveness. Hours later, they came to deliver the final document. Janelle stood on my porch again, but this time there were no tears streaking her face. She'd cried herself empty. Her eyes looked swollen, but dry, like she had finally run out of softness to hide behind. Corey stood a few steps back, hands in his pockets, head lowered. He wasn't there to protect her. He was there because consequences keep their own schedule. Reginald and Angela didn't come this time. Cowards never arrive for the ending they created. Janelle held a thin folder in her hands. White, unmarked, heavy in the way truth is heavy. I opened the door, just wide enough to face her. No further. She extended the folder with trembling fingers. Mama, this is the acknowledgement your lawyer asked for. I didn't take it right away. I let her hold it there, the weight of it hanging between us. A bridge made of paper and pain. When I finally reached for it, she let it go slowly, like she could feel a piece of her slipping with it. Inside the folder, on the first page, was her signature, her handwriting, her name, and the sentence she had agreed to sign. I acknowledged that I misused Delphine Avery's funds, acted in violation of our agreement, and caused emotional and financial harm. Her signature trembled across the bottom, a confession written in ink she could never wash off. She waited for me to say something, anything, but I didn't. I placed the folder on the entry table behind me and stepped back to the threshold. She took a shaky breath. Mama, I'm sorry. Her voice broke on the last word, but I felt nothing break inside me this time. Pain had already done its cutting. Truth had already done its cleaning. Silence had already done its healing. I looked at her the way a mother looks at the child she loves enough to finally let go of. You didn't lose me at the wedding, I said softly. Her eyes lifted, searching my face for hope. You lost me the moment you chose a woman who was never your mother over the one who raised you. The sentence landed between us like a stone dropped into deep water, quiet, heavy, impossible to ignore. Janelle's mouth parted, a small, desperate gasp pulling from her chest. The kind a child makes when they realize a consequence isn't temporary. Mama, please, she whispered. Behind her, Corey looked down. He wasn't going to save her from this. Not this time. I tightened my hand around the door. Slowly, calmly. This door stays open for truth, I said, not for betrayal. Her breath wavered. Mama, what do I do now? The question trembled in the air, fragile and lost. But I didn't answer her. Some lessons require silence. Some consequences demand distance. Some doors must close before healing can begin. I held her gaze. One last time. Long enough for her to know that love had not died, but access to me had. Then I closed the door. Quiet. Steady. Final. On the other side, I heard her inhale sharply, like someone realizing too late what they've thrown away. But I didn't open the door again.